Okay, I got some things to try this time. Um, so um, wait, I just thought that I already talked about Squeaky or Chipmunk. Oh well. But this is the thing. Last time I told you about us playing dress up, and so now watch this. This is uh, my brother and me playing dress up. Let's hope this works. There we are. Look at that really cool shawl and stuff, and my brother in my dad's uniform. That's pretty cool. I could do that. The thing is that I have to put all these pictures in there to do it this way. It's the only way I've figured out how so far, but better than nothing. Okay, now another picture that I have. So I wanted to talk about when we had this major, what I call a flood, when we were kids. The streets all flooded around our neighborhood, and they didn't get into our house. It didn't come up that high on our side, but if you went across the main street on the other side, some of those neighborhoods were flooded clear up to their doorsteps. The water was maybe even seeping into their doors in some places, but I don't know. But anyway, and then across the street from this one neighborhood, there was a grape orchard, a small grape orchard, and so the water would accumulate back up there, and that was the most crowded street. So we had this float floating device. I called it a Fleetwood. I'm pretty sure that's what it said on the side of it, but this is my memory, so I could have that wrong. But I called it a Fleetwood, and it was this almost surfboard looking thing, long and flat. And I think you would probably stick a sail in it, maybe, to make it move across water. You'd stand up on it, but we didn't have anything like that. We had some sticks, and so my brother and I don't know if my sister was involved in doing this. We don't have a picture of that, but I have a picture of my brother and I. I'm pretty sure this is a picture of my brother and I, because maybe it was my sister. I don't know. It was definitely my brother. On the Fleetwood down at the corner. And this corner was the busy street, but all the cars were going really slow because it was so flooded. So we were floating there, and then we took the Fleetwood across the street to the other side and paddled. We didn't paddle, pushed the sticks you pushed on the ground, pushed the thing across down the streets, and people would be in their windows looking out on this lake that we were pushing across. But here's a picture of us on the corner with our sticks, pushing this Fleetwood across the water. It was so much fun. It was the coolest time for having a flood ever. So I thought that was I thought you'd enjoy seeing that. I'm excited about being able to put pictures on here because I can go show you some things about our neighborhood and stuff. But like I said, I need to load it up with pictures in order to do this. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to. And somewhere around I have a picture of this, but I have to find it because it hasn't been scanned. But I had a monkey when I was little, when I was young, probably 12 or so, maybe 13, somewhere around in there. I had a monkey. So I used to have guinea pigs, and I loved my guinea pigs, but they kept having babies, and so I had all these guinea pigs. I had a whole bunch of guinea pigs, and the pet store, Hanson's Pet Store, was the pet store we always went to when I was a kid, and he had all sorts of different stuff there, and so one time he got these monkeys, and they were squirrel monkeys, And so this whole cage full of monkeys. So I told my mom, I said, I want a monkey because I'd always loved monkeys and I wanted one so bad. And she said, okay, but you're going to have to get rid of the guinea pigs in order to have the monkey. So I decided I'd do that because I had so many guinea pigs I wasn't close to them anymore. And so I had to take my guinea pigs in and trade them in to Mr. Hansen for my monkey and then pay. I think they were $19.95 from my memory, what I can remember, $19.95 for a monkey. Totally cool. Um, and so we took a cage with us, and Mr. Hansen took the cage into this big walk-in cage that all these monkeys were in, and these monkeys were just jumping everywhere. They were just wild, and they were screaming, and their teeth were showing and all this stuff. And he set the cage on the ground, and he opened up the door, and he had gloves on his hands, so he was going to catch one of these monkeys. And while he was doing that, this one little monkey just walked over, kind of walked over and crawled into the cage and sat there eating something. And in the meantime, he had trouble catching these monkeys, and so he said, well, how about this one? And I said, no, I don't want that one because it doesn't look healthy. It looked like it was really sick because it's not at all rambunctious, and it just sat there eating whatever it had, a monkey bone, I think. Well, monkey bones weren't monkey bones. They were the name of a biscuit you could give a monkey. So he went ahead and left this little monkey in the cage, but he went ahead and caught another monkey. And when he did that, that monkey just went insane. He was biting at his gloves, and he was wiggling, and he was doing all this weird stuff. And I said, okay, well, I'll take the one in the cage. So we took this monkey in the cage, and he had secretly told my mom, she told me later, he had secretly told her that if that monkey died in the night, they would replace him. But he didn't. I took him home, and he got a little wild at home when I went to play with him, but he learned quickly that I wasn't going to harm him, and so I named him Jojo, and I had Jojo for a very long time, actually. He lived quite a while after I actually moved out of my mom and dad's house, but okay, here's the trouble with owning a monkey. Monkeys like to put their smell on you, so you could have Jojo on your shoulder, and then he would poop and rub his butt and put the smell on you, which was disgusting. So I had to get a diaper, and because he had a tail, nothing really worked to keep him from pooping on you. So it was one of those things that I loved Jojo, but I didn't carry him around as much as I would have had it not been for the smell and the disgust of what he was doing. I got to where I put a towel or something over my shoulder, so I didn't, but he liked to crawl all over my head and all this kind of stuff. He had a little, you don't put a collar on them here, you put it around their belly. And so he had this little collar around his belly, and I'd take him out and walk him around. He was very cool. My dad built him this huge walk-in cage, which was really neat. It was a really sturdy, well-built cage. And he put things in there for Jojo to play on. And so he had this nice cage that I could go in and sit with him and spend time with him. And so I would do that a lot, and I would take treats out for him. And he was so tame by the time we'd had him for a while, you could actually let him out of the cage. And so my dad always was growing tomatoes and stuff, So my dad would go before we had Jojo, he would pick the worms, those tomato worms off the plant, and he would toss them up on the roof of the house, and the birds would run over there and get them. So when we got Jojo absolutely loved the tomato worms, so my dad was always feeding Jojo the tomato worms. So he would let Jojo out, and they would go onto the tomato plants and hunt for tomato worms. And it was disgusting because he'd crunch into him and his junk went all over it. It was really, you don't want to be holding Jojo when he ate a tomato worm, trust me. Um, but we had this big rooster that we got one year for Easter, and we named him Easter. And he grew up to be this huge white rooster. And he had spurs on him like this long, well, about this long, by the time he was an adult. And he, as with all our critters, he just wandered around in the yard and, hung out. But when he got to be a grown rooster, he became, well, I'm sure a whole lot of it was horny, but he was also protective. But he got to where he would attack people. And he attacked my sister a lot. My sister one time whopped him with a bat. She was going to the car. Easter loved me. He never attacked me. But we were going to the car, and Easter started chasing my sister. She was going to a game, so she had a baseball bat in her hand. So she swung that baseball bat and whapped Easter right in the head. It didn't matter. He went after her anyway, but she made it into the car okay, but she hated that rooster. But there was this little girl, and especially this one little girl, that would walk past our house to go to school. And she had really, really, really long blonde hair. And I think that's the reason that he chose her. I think he fell in love with that little girl or something. But she would come by our house, and he would take off, and he would chase her down the street, and she'd be screaming down the street. So we eventually had to put Easter in the monkey cage to keep him from chasing people, because that wasn't really cool. It's a wonder we never got in trouble by people. Thank God he never actually attacked the little girl, because with his spurs he could really hurt you. My dad, I think, clipped him one time, the point off of him maybe. I can't really remember, but it seemed like he did. But anyway, when Easter got put in the monkey cage, Jojo thought that was awesome, because when the weather was cooler, he had a warming light in there, to keep him warm. But he would get on the rooster's Easter's back and get under his feathers and snuggle up in there. And Easter would walk around with him on his back, but he couldn't walk real good, because the monkey, even though he wasn't very big, he was too big for Easter. So they had this kind of bond until Easter passed away. And then I moved out of the house, and Jojo stayed living in the cage, and my dad would go feed him and everything, but got to where my dad would let him out all the time. And my dad had these big, tall, skinny trees growing by the back fence of the property, and he just let Jojo out, and Jojo would go up there and climb all through these trees looking for bugs, and had a gale time. And then eventually he'd come back down, and my dad had put him back in the cage. And there was a little girl that lived behind our house that loved Jojo. She would always come up and say hi and talk to my dad and stuff when Jojo was out. And I think she probably fed him things, I don't know, but because I wasn't there. I was having a family by then, and so I didn't come home and spend a lot of time with Jojo. But and that probably was actually maybe pre-family, because I don't remember my kids ever meeting Jojo. But anyway, so she asked my dad if she could have him, and my dad asked me, and I said sure. It would be good for him to have a friend, but I wanted to make sure it was a good home for him. And unfortunately, I think because he was no longer in his familiar cage, she didn't have him very long, and he passed away. But he was a pretty old monkey, so who knows the reason. But anyway, that's my story of Jojo. Jojo the monkey. he was fun while I had. Okay, now this is just something I wanted to let you know about, because a lot of this is about just what life was like back in the 50s. No, back then for a very, and maybe even now, I don't know, but we had the information. I think you dialed 411 for information, and that was to get phone numbers and stuff like that. If you didn't know some phone number and you couldn't find it in the phone book, you could call information. But we used to use information for other purposes, like when we were making a cake or something, maybe my mom wasn't home or something, we would call information and ask them about ingredients, how many cups were in a pint, or things like, and the lady would answer. It was totally cool. So we used the information line. I mean, it said right on the phone, information. So we used it for information. It's good that the people on the other end had a good sense of humor and actually knew stuff, because they almost always answered us. I don't remember them not answering us. It was totally cool. Okay, another thing we used to do, and this was when we were teenagers, and I'm pretty sure they still do this today. So I'm telling you about this because if they do, you should really get involved in this if you like people and fun times. But we used to go on sports car rallies. Now when my dad was going through his, 40s thing that men go through, he bought a Corvette. And I will put up a picture of that Corvette actually when I get it. I got to save them all and put them on. But he bought a Corvette, and of course it would only seat two people. So my sister would drive our Carmen Ghia, which was a convertible, and my dad would take the top off of the Corvette. And we'd go to these sports car rallies. Now, sports car rallies are totally cool. What they do is they have instructions. It's like a written map. And everybody leaves, they give you each a number, and then you line up by number, and then everybody's departed at a certain distance apart from each other. So they let the first guy go out, and then they might wait 30 seconds or a minute or however long they waited, and then the second guy would go out, and you would follow the instructions. And the goal is to follow the path that they write out at within the closest time period that the original maker of the map did. And you went, and it was in sections. So let's say, hang on just a second. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so it would be things like drive at 33 miles an hour down. This is to leave. We'd always meet at a pizza place or a big parking lot somewhere or something, and then so your instructions would be, say, turn right onto this road and then drive at 33 miles an hour until you get to the second signal, and then turn left and go however many, a certain amount of miles, 1.3 miles, and turn right. And so they wouldn't give you the name of the roads. They would just give you, you'd have to watch how far you went and calculate all this stuff. And they'd always take you out into the country. So once you got out into the country, it would be like drive 3.7 miles to such and such a, they might name a building, or they might not. They might just say that many miles and then turn left. And so you'd follow these, and each leg you would get they'd have checkpoints. And when you get to the checkpoint, they check you in, and then they check you out when you leave again. And they did the same thing where they'd have everybody be a certain distance apart. And so they'd write down the time you got there. So when you left where we started, they would write down the time you left. And then when you got to where that first checkpoint, they would write down the time you got there. So at the end of the rally, which might probably be 4 sections or more, they would tally up how close you were to the original time on each one, and then you'd win trophies and plaques and stuff. So, and it's so much fun. I mean, you'd always, they knew when you were going to screw up, because they might even put up a sign saying wrong way on the side of the road. If you were lucky enough to see it, you wouldn't go too far out of your way, because they knew by the way that they were written and what you had come to, you may mistake and take the wrong route. And that was of course purposeful. And so when you'd come back, when you'd realize you did that and you'd come back, you'd like try to speed up a little bit and get back on track so that you weren't too far off. One time, we one of the instructions had you weren't supposed to, but it was a flaw that had you go down this one dirt road, and you ended up on this guy's property, and everybody was making the mistake of going down this road. Almost everybody in the alley made that mistake, I think, in the rally. So there was a guy, when we got there was a guy out there with a rifle, and he told us all to stay there. He was calling the cops, and he was going to shoot us if we left. And then my dad pulled up and saw this guy, And so my dad told us, he said, get in the car and back up and drive out of here slowly. And we said, no, Dad, he'll shoot us. And my dad said, no, just get in the car and leave right now. Do it quietly, but leave right now. And so we did. And of course the guy didn't shoot us. He wasn't going to shoot anybody, but I thought it was cool that my dad realized that and sent us out of there, and we were safe. But that man was so mad, and I'll bet you he probably did some sort of complaint that got people in trouble. But it's a very fun time, and so if you can find a sports car rally, now you really do need to own some sort of a sports car, a small car. Maybe the cars today would even work, like my little CBS, or those would probably be small enough, because they have you turn, use, and they have you doing all sorts of things on narrow roads, and you have to have a car that can maneuver in the narrow roads. One time our car broke down. Our Carmen Gia broke down. So we're on a windy mountain road, and we pulled over, and we're dead in the water. I forget what had happened to it. Something had happened to it. And my dad said, well, drive it until it quits. And so, because it was making some noise or something. So we drove it, and then it quit. And so he came back with his Corvette. Now, we didn't have cell phones or anything, so he must have just been watching us. Came back with his Corvette. He tied us up to his Corvette with a rope or a chain or whatever he had on him and pulled us. But he continued doing the rally. So my dad's doing the rally, pulling us behind him. And you're supposed to go a certain mile an hour, right? Pulling a car at one of the speeds was a little high. And so and because you're on a mountain road, he went around the curve, and we're like swinging out to the side. It was real scary. Well, it would be me and my sister, and then my brother sat in the back seat. Because, he wanted to be involved too. So he's in the back seat. And I was the navigator. My sister's the driver. Now, you have to have a navigator and a driver. You can bring anybody else that you want, but you have to have a navigator, because the navigator is the one that's reading the directions and telling you where to turn and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, if you can get on a sports car rally and you have a small enough car, trust me, you will have an absolute ball. When you're all done, you always ended up at a pizza parlor or something where you could get food and everything, and everybody would be sitting, because you're waiting for them to tally everything up to tell the winners and all, and everybody be sitting around talking about their adventures and how they made this mistake and what they did, and it was so much fun. And we won, and they would give you little plaques that you could stick in they had stickers on the back of them with the name of the rally, and I think the year and month maybe of when it happened, and you could stick them on your dashboard. And we had we had a whole thing full of those. And my sister and I, believe it or not, did win some trophies, we would come out. We lucked out. People had all sorts of calculators and ways to. They had so many instruments to try to, calculate, and then here we'd come along and just manage to win. It was totally cool. Then I wanted to tell you, and this is just a side note. On the old cars, a lot of the old cars, you will see these little windows that turned out. They were usually triangle shaped on the front of the front seat windows. They'd be up towards the windshield. And those were called wind wings. Just so you know, those were called wind wings. Now you could take that, you'd open the wind wing and it would blow air on you. It was very cool. I don't know why they did away with wind wings. They're the coolest thing. And then you could turn it all the way around and it would blow wind onto the windshield. So if your windshield was fogging up, I mean, you might get cold because if your windshield's fogging, usually it's kind of cold outside. But you could blow the wind on the windshield and it would clear your windshield off. Wind wings, they should still have them. Now, another thing we used to do that we loved was, I think I told you we used to go roller skating a lot. I might have told you this story, but as I listened back, I must have missed a lot of it. Because what happened was I made a video, and then a couple of them, in the beginning it didn't work right, so I tried to redo it and couldn't remember what I talked about. And then another time the sound wasn't there, so it was a wasted video, so I threw it away. And I talked about some of these things, so I don't know which of the things actually made it onto video and which not. Even though I went back and listened, I thought I talked about that, but I didn't hear it, so I might have just not been listening right. But we used to go to roller skating on Friday nights, and we had a roller skating rink very near our house that we could go to, and usually we went there. But on Friday nights, if you went to the one on Blackstone, after you got through roller skating, they would have a sock hop. So you'd take your skates off and turn them in and just never put shoes on, and then in the sock hop you could go out and dance. I absolutely loved the sock hop. Now my dad had an aversion to us going places on a regular basis, so he did not want us going every Friday night to the sock hop because then he felt you got a reputation. I wanted the reputation. I loved going there. I wanted to know the people and all that kind, but didn't know. He was kind of funny that way. But sometimes they would actually even have bands there, like Paul Revere and the Raiders. They were a popular group back in the day, and if you are interested in who they are, look them up, because they were cool. It was a cool band, and they were there once that I can remember. And so we probably got to meet them. I don't know, because it was, you were all out there together. This is very cool. Another thing that we used to do was go to the hard tops, and that's racing. They may still have hard tops today, but they were modified street rods, sort of, and they would put these scoops on the top to make them go faster. And we had our favorites, Marshall. What was his name? Marshall, I keep wanting to think. And then Pombo, I think, was the other guys. Those were the two main guys, and they were always in competition. So we had our favorites. I think mine was Marshall, but it was fun. And it wasn't costly, and you could go watch these hardtop races. And that was another one. My dad would not let us go every week because he didn't want us to have this reputation. So, funny stuff. I don't know. To me, I think that's funny. Anyway, that's what I got for today. I'm going to try to put more pictures in for the next time, and try to figure out how to do all this, and try to figure out how to get the ones out of there that I already put in there so that they're not backed up too far. I hope that you're enjoying these, and don't be afraid to leave comments, like Bruce. If you don't like that I said what I said, leave a comment. Oh my God, that was funny. Sorry, Bruce. Didn't mean to make you angry. But that's what sisters are for. What can I say? So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you come back and watch some more. I have quite a few more memories to share, and when I run out of memories, I don't know. I may come back and talk about just dumb stuff. But anyway, enjoy your life and have a great time. And I will see you next time. Love you all.